bad about that. In the mid-90s, I started using geopack drainage. I was like the first test project. Jay Vos came up and showed us geopack drainage, and so I ran a test project, developed a manual that's still poorly written out there. And then geopack drainage went away. And then partly because roadway wanted us to start doing automatic pay items. So at that point in time, we couldn't figure out how to make geopack drainage do it. So what we did was we got a big DDB, and you drew everything using the DDB design. What was that? Design and computation manners, how we drew everything. And then geopack came back up and said, oh, but utilities can use geopack drainage to check for conflicts. So y'all really need to go back to geopack drainage. And everybody said, okay. And I said, but how are we going to do the quantities? Because we thought that was what everybody wanted. They said, well, you can write this real simple VBA. So we worked on that VBA for about 5 years. And so it wasn't damn as simple as they thought it was going to be. And we got it done. And when we got it done, then Roadway kind of looked at us and said, well, that's great. We really want the drainage summary sheet. So, because we don't really care about the quantities. So that's when we started working on the drainage summary sheet. And there were a lot of people that were active in that, and I guess, so I'm going to take Steve's thunder and thank those people. And Brian Edwards and Tim Merrill was on it at the beginning, and then Steve Brown, an IT guy that remains nameless, and Jason Talley was involved in it in the beginning until he came to join y'all. And then Tasha White and Kevin Moore all had input from a roadway standpoint on how that sheet needed to look like. So we tried to reproduce with Jason's help, especially early on, to make sure that the drainage summary sheet looks exactly like the one that y'all use now. And that's what we wanted to start with because we knew that's what everybody would be comfortable with. So we started from that process, and then we started developing these lovely Visual Basic applications. And I've got where's this Camtasia thing that you want me to start? Right there. You've already pressed it? Okay. You snuck around on me. So they're underneath, as long as you go in as a geopack user, a hydro user, I'm nervous, so I'm going to stumble. You get these toolbars. And the reports is the one that y'all already know. That's the one that creates the inlet comps and the storm drain comps. And Steve's got where it'll print from there. He disables the other printers. So then we came into pay item utility and pay item utility legacy. Now we just recently renamed those because we thought it would make more sense. Pay item utility legacy is what used to be pay item utility. That's going to be clear as mud for a few minutes. But what that was is when you ran through pay item utility, you had to answer what every single pipe type was. So as you ran that process, you had to say that each pipe was class 3 or class 4 or this gauge or whatever. And that annoyed me when I was going through doing my projects because for the longest time I worked in TIP. And so I said, well, I already know it when I'm for the most part, I know it most of the time when I'm doing geopack drainage. And I would rather pick it there and not have to answer that question again. Because if I can answer those questions, then I won't have to do it every time I run through a system. So
choose that top option.
Okay.
There you go.
So then we came out with what I guess we called pay item utility 2. But then, so that's where this is the override pay item thing came out of pay item utility 2. But that's where we want to be using that one now. But we couldn't get rid of the old one because if you did it the old way, if you'd already done your geopack drainage, I didn't want you to have to go back through and re-choose all your pipe types there. I just wanted to be able to leave it alone, but people seemed to not know what they were supposed to do. And that was in-house, not just out-of-house. I wasn't doing a good job of explaining it, and nobody really wanted to read my documentation. So, which I don't blame them. I don't like reading documentation either. So what we've done now is we've tried to make sure by calling it pay item legacy that you kind of understand that's old, it's in the past, and the pay item utility is the new one to be using. So if you're not sure, and this is mainly for the hydro users, so I'm sorry if I'm boring the roadway guys. So we wrote a DDB that captures most of this stuff. It's a DDB because the other one's an MDB. And you come into preferences, and you come down here to the DDB, and it's in the workspaces. So wherever y'all have it in your workspaces, it's in ours. It's under data, under hydraulic standards and data. And it's the pay item one's there. So once you choose that, I'm coming in here and I'm going to pick a pipe. You turn that on, and you click here, and it gives you all the options, pretty much. And what our programmer that will remain nameless was able to do is he reads these words and he gets it over to the spreadsheet. Partly he does a couple things. One is if he reads the existing or drainage, which is those lovely alternate pipes that we have to use, it would have put them on the alternate pipe level. He also can read it and know that to put it on the, if it's class 3, class 4, or class 5, he gets it on those levels. And then the gauge thickness, we just append to the ad hoc, which hopefully y'all know. If you don't, do you know enough about what an ad hoc is that you don't care? It's in the manual. We wrote it up. So if not, you can read the background information there. So you'll choose it there, and then it comes in, and once it reads, it will actually. That's not a good place to go. See that? But once you run the utility, and we'll run that in a second, then you'll be able to, it will append that level. It gets on the right level. It knows what class it is. It gets the right pay item, and it helps fill out the drainage summary sheet. So does that make sense, what the difference is between pay item utility and pay item utility legacy is? Silence means, does that make sense, Frank?
Yes, it does. I got a question.
Okay.
You need to check off the right number each time, each pipe?
Pretty much.
Okay.
But once you do it, once you kind of turn it on the first time, it should almost stay on.
Okay. But you have to pick each one, even though you've already picked it.
Well, if it's right, if it says class 4, then you don't have to pick it again. If the pipe changes, then you.
Okay.
So it's like if you go pick a steel pipe and you go pick the 16 gauge, then you have to come back and pick class 4 the next time you get to a class 4. Now, the one thing that we weren't smart enough to do yet, I don't know if we'll ever get there, is it doesn't know right now. The program doesn't know that that we don't have 16 gauge 30-inch pipes. So you can fill it out that way, but it's not going to move it to the right level. It's just not. It's asking a lot to try to remember to get that. You could fill it out here, but it's not going to transfer. So if you go and all of a sudden you see this pipe that's a 30-inch CS pipe and it's not on the right level, then that's probably what you did. The other thing that can happen sometimes is if you choose that to be a concrete pipe, or you choose it to be a concrete pipe, and then down there you pick it to be a 16 gauge pipe, that's going to trick it out too. Or if you get your pipe material and what the override pay item knows it should be, that can interfere with what level it should be on. So I think we're done with that. Close that. I don't have to look up here like I do at my screen. So now we can start running the VBA. I talked to one consultant. I said, do I have to make a PowerPoint, or can I just run through these things? And he told me he didn't like PowerPoint. I could just run through this. So hopefully y'all are okay with that. So we come up and we'll pick the project, and it's usually better if you only have to have one GDF file in there. If several people have to work it, you can merge GDF files together. I've done it. The only thing you got to make sure is that you don't have the same numbers in different files, but since we've got the structure numbers numbered, we shouldn't run into that issue. I'm not going to run it on whole, but y'all know there's actually three options now. So there's get pay items for all elements, so that gets them for all the ones done through geopack drainage. And the other thing that we have is, and I'll probably try to call it this way, is driveway pipes are done by what we call hand design. So you're not putting driveway pipes in geopack drainage. You don't want to, and you don't know what the inverts are at the time. Now I've gotten to the point that on cross pipes, just because I know it's going in the drainage summary sheet, I go ahead after I design my drainage summary, my cross pipe by hand, I go ahead and just hard code it in there. Because at least then it gets it in the drainage summary sheet and makes everybody's life easier. So you got the get pay items for all elements again. It does geopack drainage and hand design stuff, and the hand design, I guess, is stuff like pipe removal, driveway pipes, flowable fill, elbows, and that may be about it. I'm sure there's some other stuff. If you place riprap in there, it'll stop and ask you. Then I got the guy to get pay items for all networks, because it got to the point that if I needed to go back through and rerun a bunch of systems, that was a pain to have to go run system 1, run system 2. So that's why I did that. And then we have get pay items for that particular network. And so if you're only running 2 or 3 and you've got 50, then you probably just want to run that. If you've made small adjustments all the way through the project, you may want to run the second option. And if you've added a lot of stuff, both hand design and geopat drain design, then you get to run through the top one again. Because my thought process is I do the design before I hand it over to, in my case, Galen to check. I'm going to run the get pay item for all networks and get that so it's on the right level. I'm probably going to number them. I'm not going to run the drainage summary sheet the first time. And I'm not really going to worry about some of these other programs. I'll let Galen check it. Maybe let Twiz or Andrew check it. So for me, my bosses, who y'all all know, and then I'll make their corrections. And before I send it to roadway, then I'm going to run the other programs. I'm going to run the station and offset program. I'm going to run the drainage summary sheet. Something Steve wanted me to point out is on the front page, and if you open up your sheet that I gave you, the overview of the hydraulic unit VBAs, I'm going to try to refer to them as the correct names. Occasionally we slip up, and I know Steve's going to call it as pads. So that's the report. The program name for it is Berg. Pay item utility is PU.
But pay item's what they see on the drop.
Right. You'll see pay item on the drop down.
But in the background, it's called PU.
Yeah. If you go look in the workspaces, you would see PU or PU Legacy. So, and you also see it in that menu bar right there. You can see where it's, of course, that one's still coming up as new PU for some reason. So, just to run a sample of this, in case nobody's ever, that one's too small. We'll run that one. So if nobody's ever run this program before, where have you been? But it comes up and it says it's going to take a few minutes. The drainage says it's been assigned. Now it's going to start asking questions. And here, we were real lucky that we were able to identify the pipe now so that we don't have to try to guess. You just answer that question. And that is the first time that's blown up on me.
Of course.
Yeah. We ran through this. So it would cycle through there. I want to make sure if the program doesn't end right, or if you've hit the X instead of the exit, it won't unload correctly. And so one of the things you have to do is come underneath. You go utilities, macros, project manager, and if it's under there and it's not supposed to be, then you need to click on it and then click on the unload, which is that one right there. So I'm not going to tempt fate and try to run it again, but it would cycle through it. I will show y'all one other thing that I had shown our group before. No, it won't come up. I don't know, once you start running this program, we weren't able to keep the microstation tools available. So he was able to come in and create a zoom in and a zoom out and a pan, and that's what those buttons are. I think we've got a picture of it in the documentation. Yep. We didn't number the pages. That would have made sense. Actually, if I run it, hang on, I'll run it again. Maybe the second time it'll run. So, I had 30 minutes sitting up here that I could have run this thing and seen it was going to blow up.
Counting the title page is the 6th page.
All right, there we go. So here you go. And people, especially now that, I don't know if y'all have 2 monitors, we have 2 monitors, so it's still showing up on the far left screen. But that was because at the time that we started, we only had one monitor. And we were trying to make sure that it didn't come into the center of the screen, so every time you worked, you had to move it over to the side. Because that's just it was kind of a pain at the time. Now it shows up on the far left screen. You've got two screens. If you move it to wherever you want it to be, that same window will come up there every time. So if you moved all your windows to wherever you want them to be, they'll keep coming up in the right spot after the first time. But that basically is your view navigation tools. The green one will always, if you panned way over to the right or left, you click on the green and it centers it up again. The plus and the minus, obviously, you have to zoom in and zoom out. So there again, if you need to get out of this program, you click exit. Make sure you click exit whether it's done now or done later. And he will ask you several times if you want to get out, because he wants to make sure you want to get out. A lot of this was done to try to help protect us from ourselves, because he watched me work and he knew I needed all the help I could get. So you run pay item utility. Roadway, which they never do, calls up and says they've added a drive pipe. You don't want to run through that process again because you've got 30 pages of drainage. So what we created was a program called, on your thing it shows up as SIAM, which actually stood for single item element. Hopefully I'm not making y'all dizzy when I do this. And here, what SIAM does is we have to go ahead and power select it, because it won't, there again, once we start this, the tools won't work. And you can typically power select more than one at a time. And hopefully this one will work. You click the edit pay item. You click edit ad hoc. It's supposed to do this. So then you put your structure number in, which we will just put something in extraordinarily high. We'll go ahead and tell it the alignment. Maybe it only does this for drive pipes. So that was L. Click continue. And it says that the item is edited. So now if we go, this was something else I should have shown y'all.
Still have an active dialog.
Yeah. See, I can't do anything while it's open. So one way you sit there and look at ad hocs, let me start roadway tools. This guy right here, if you come down to the one that looks like the price tag, that's ad hoc. That's what the ad hocs are. So now you can see, if you never look, this is what it is. So here it's got the fact that it's a side drain pipe. It's got the length of the pipe somewhere on there. Yep, length. It's got the right level, and it's got the payout number. So now, something that's confusing to everybody is, with the new alternate pipe stuff, is statewide is side drain pipe, I think. Y'all tell me. Or I'll go back in and look again. Drainage. I don't want to tell y'all wrong. I'm trying to make, because this confuses everybody in-house. Okay. So if it's regional or sub-regional, it's a drainage pipe. If it's a statewide, they want to call it a side drain pipe. I think they thought they were going to get a better price if they called it a side drain pipe. So we have dry pipes that for the longest time were called side drain pipes. And then we have statewide side drain pipes, which fall under a different criteria. They need more cover. So the side drain pipes that are statewide, they're used in geopack drainage, they go on an alternate pipe level. Driveway pipes come underneath. To draw a driveway pipe, you're going to come up here, English, and then you go to side drain. You pretty much got the three popular choices. Those are driveway pipes. Those are driveway pipes for us, and it shows up some other times that it's important to be able to use. Does that make any sense? Jason, does that make sense? Okay. Silence means concurrence. That's what they told us. And does everybody know what that does? Ad hoc stuff make sense a little bit? Have y'all ever seen that? when y'all call me and tell me you're having problems running it, one of the first things I'm gonna do after I get you to send me the files, I'm gonna pull up the ad hocs to see if the elements got this stuff on there. Because if it doesn't, if it's not on there, if it's not on there right, then that's where I'm gonna have to start trying to debug it.
Bill, would you show us again how you got to that channel?
But yeah, I have to open up roadway tools, and then the tool that's typically up there is that project manager guy, and it's the third one down. It's the one that looks like a price tag. I think I've got that. That's in here too, in the documentation. All right, so I've run pattern utility. Everybody's checked it. I've made a couple edits. Now I need to tell everything. So station and offset is for all the stuff that we place by hand design that doesn't have a station, which is actually, if we go back to that, you notice that all right, so there's no station, there's no alignment, there's no offset. So you're not in good shape here for your alignment. I mean, for getting on the drainage summary sheet. It would just all get put at the bottom of the page. So what we're going to do now is we would run through station and offset. Now what he did for me, what it used to be was we have to come in here and we would power select everything that we wanted power selected. And then you would run through it. And that's a little bit, especially when you're doing driveway pipes, it's a little bit of a pain because how do I know how to number it if I don't know what sheet I'm on? So then I'm trying to zoom in and zoom out, and that's cumbersome. So then you could go through where you power select each sheet at a time. That's a little bit of a pain. I mean, we're trying to do something, we're trying to find the best route. There's no perfect route. So one thing that we did come in here and he's able to do, and he's able to do it by level, which is part of why that side, drawing that stuff on side drain level is important, is we came up with these are our top 4 choices. So if you just want to do the pipe removal or the flowable fill or any of these 4, you select a radio button and then you would click specific items and it's going to start going through and asking you. I'm going to pick my GPK file, and in this case I think you're typically going to be able to know where you are on you'll at least know what alignment you're on. I think that's one thing that zooming in and zooming out we can find out pretty quick, and it made it easier. So if this case I'm just going to stick everything on sheet 11, I mean on alignment L, thank you, trying out a new tongue. As long as it doesn't change, you would just keep clicking that. If it's switching between Y and stuff, you've got to do that. So you have your option on how you want to do it. Whether you want to do it on a Y line at a time, or you can power select, or whether or not you want to take the general options. Okay, so it added all the ad hocs. Now hopefully I'm going to be able to show you this. And now we've got a station. We've got an alignment, a station, and the offset in there, which is everything you need to get it on that drainage summary sheet. Because I know how much, when y'all are doing that by hand, I know that's a pain in the rear to do. I have to type all that stuff in. I wouldn't want to do it. That's why I fought it for the last 15 years. So we run station and offset. Now you would run drainage summary sheet. From a hydro standpoint, so Frank, for me and you, all you've got to do is choose whether this is statewide tier or sub-regional tier. In this case, this one's statewide tier. I'm going to generate it. It's going to take a couple minutes. In a dream world, he would have come up and, actually you do have a spinning thing on this one. Sometimes we don't know if it gets locked up or not. It's been a pretty stable program. I wouldn't have put these, I don't push them up unless they work on our machines, but I think I'm going to start trying to send them out to a couple of y'all and ask y'all to run them in y'all's workspaces before we put them up on the web so we don't crash everybody's stuff, because that's not a whole lot of fun. It's costing y'all time and money, and we're not happy with ourselves. Now, as we wait for this, has anybody got any questions right now?
Can I mention what it's doing in the background?
Sure.
When he clicked on that button, create drainage summary sheet, the program that's running goes out to the Hydro workspace, grabs a template Excel file, which will ultimately be the drainage summary sheet Excel file. It grabs a template one out of the workspace, makes a copy of it, populates it with all that ad hoc data on a background worksheet in that file, and then a whole bunch of stuff in the Excel spreadsheet, dumps it into the proper place on the drainage summary sheet. All this is happening in the background. You don't see it. That file is then saved to your project folder, and the VBA that's currently running right now assigns it a name that has a date embedded within the name. And so you never actually see the Excel spreadsheet, even though it's opening in the background, being populated with all this data, and then eventually being saved to your project folder. After the whole thing is done and the dust is settled, that's when you'll be able to go and look at the Excel spreadsheet in your project folder.
All right, so we do get one window that comes up about halfway through and says, we're getting ready to open up an Excel spreadsheet. I think it says something like, we're going to open up an Excel spreadsheet. You click OK, and it's doing some more stuff. And it finally says it's generated. We're all excited. We need to make sure we hit close, not the X. So let's see. I think we'll go to that first. So you can see where I've run this twice now. And like Steve says, it actually gives you a new date each time. If you happen to run it 2 days in a row, so you run it this morning, you run it this afternoon, it's going to come up and say, I want to replace it. So if you don't want it replaced, then you just need to change the name, add AM to it, or anything you want to on that. From a Hydro user, which I think none of y'all get lucky enough to be treated like we've insisted on being treated for at least 6 more years.
Enable content.
Got to enable the content. So really all I do is get on here. I may pick the fact that this is CS pipe. One thing that we did, and I'll go through this so Steve doesn't have to, we decided that you're only going to call for CS pipe or aluminum pipe on a project. But the chances of you being somewhere where you're crossing 17, which is typically our line for when you go back and forth between CS pipe and aluminum pipe, if you were right there, just call for one type of pipe anyway. I don't really think the contractor would want to have to figure out what steel pipe, which side needs steel and which side needs aluminum anyway. We needed to do that because we needed the space. So a roadway guy, and Steve's going to go through this more, is probably going to have to go through, and unfortunately probably for the Hydro people in this room, y'all are going to probably have to fill this out. So what happened here is to build this thing, we had to put everything on this. So you had to come across and put every type of pipe that you were going to hit. And there's going to be times that we're going to have class 4 and class 5 pipe and possibly class 3. And you're going to have side drain pipe and go all the way. And at the time, XL only handled so many rows and so many columns. So in order to save space, we said that you're either going to have this or you're going to have CA pipe. So if we toggle back and forth, you'll see the heading change. So it's flipped over to that. Because really nothing else changes. The core gauge, the thickness doesn't change, nothing else changes.
Some of the elbow headers out at the far right.
Yeah, probably anything that has to do with CS pipe would change to CA. So now this is the same way that Roadway's got their sheet right now, where you've got your standard, I guess what we consider standard gauge thicknesses. So for some reason we have a 24 that needs to be a heavier gauge because it's under higher fill, then you're going to come in and actually fill that out by hand. And it will actually dump in the dump column, which is the next stage that I need to talk to you about. And you will manually move it over. So as a Hydro user in-house, my responsibility is to come back over to this sheet and come down looking for a time that I get a red square in that column, because it means there's something in the dump column. And I'm going to come over here and look and see what's there. And I've got to decide whether it's a common issue, whether it's something that we know is kind of in the exclusion column, that we couldn't handle that the roadway guy's going to have to use, or whether or not it was a standard box 2GI that should have been picked up, and then I got to figure out what went wrong. For the most part, if there's stuff in that, if there's 2GIs or a DI or catch basins that are over there, I need to look at it. So you would actually, even in y'all's case, I guess, you can make sure stuff was run right. I mean, if it's all red, then something probably wouldn't run right. But if it's just certain things are, then probably the best thing to do is to pack up your GDF file and your DRN file and email them to me and ask me to look at them, and I'll get to them as quickly as I can. I mean, if it's a bridge job, y'all may not care. You fill it out by hand and be done. It'll take you less time to do that than it will be to call me. We've now handled 3GIs in a better way, so that's why it was being put in the dump column now. So that one's not a good one. Head walls are one of the things we are not handling. Adjust 2GIs, I'm not sure. I think we may be handling more of them now, but I'm not sure we're handling all of them. Because when you adjust a 2GI, you got them. Are you going to specify the grade, that kind of stuff? So head walls, we're not. And assuming it all looks like it's run right, from my standpoint, from in-house, I get to pack it up, close it up, ship it to roadway, and let them start moving it around, which was it's Steve's part. I kind of hear y'all get to end up getting, a lot of the hydro folks here have to end up manipulating it themselves. So hopefully Steve's lessons will show you pretty good. Is there a question I can answer you on this sheet, or do y'all want to wait till Steve talks more about this one? They want to wait. They're tired of hearing me.
Ask about drainage summary sheet, geopack drainage questions or DBA.
Yeah, I will. Okay, so the last thing that we tried to do in-house, because I got tired of having to number all the boxes. All this is what I get tired about doing. I ask them if they can write me a program. Is geopack drainage knows what the boxes are. Why do I need to go through and have to go through and label all the structures? So he went through, and what he does is the programmer mines through the GDF file, which has been ad hoc, and he grabs the pay item utility number, he grabs the number. That's a bad, because that's placed by hand. So if we come back over here where something's placed by, there we go. There's a good area. So we can actually do this one fairly quickly. All right, so if I delete it, I'll go away. And it's going to say, so I want to add them. I've picked a scale, which if you're using 50 scale, you use a 1. Say OK. The reason why we had scales is because my next job came in. I have had a job in Durham, which is done 20 scale. So the 50 scale things are a little big. So that comes in. Now what he does is he has to bring it in at an unrotated view, so it's true north, and it's always going to come in on the upper right-hand corner, basically. There's no way he knows which way your sheet's going. So as much as I would love for him to make my life easier and made it rotate with the sheets, he wasn't able to do that. So one thing you are able to do is you can go through and power select all the ones that are on, say, sheet 4 and rotate by center, and at least get them squared up. There again, in-house, I would probably let roadway move it after they get through moving all my other tests. Since y'all are kind of stuck with y'all getting, I don't do it all, you're going to have to move it wherever you have to. You're going to have to move it yourselves, or you can let the roadway guys move it for y'all too. I'm sure Greg wouldn't mind moving it for you. So the other thing that a lot of our guys in-house like to do is they like to put tops and inverts on there. So I actually asked him to come back and add the tops and inverts. And so he did that for me too. So there's the tops and inverts. That comes in also rotated the same way, and it comes in on the bottom right-hand corner, I believe. Now one thing to note is if you come back through and you rerun the drainage again, and you change the invert, the inverts and the tops change, that's no longer that's no longer intelligent. It's not. They're not dynamic. They're not dynamic. He's helping me use the English language today, so they're not dynamic. So you're going to have to delete them, which at least it's easy to delete them, and re-add them. So, but unfortunately, if you do that, if you really cared about where they were, now you got to move them again, you got to rotate them again. So I still think it's a good situation. They come in on a tops and invert level, so you can turn it off. So nobody has to see it. It's just there for whoever wants to see it, or they can turn it on when they're going through the CAD file. So I think those are two useful tools. I tried to write in here what I thought the kind of the workflow was. I had thought about doing a flow chart, and then I don't really see where there's flow chart material in here. So the way I wrote this is once I get it, it's like the second, or I think it's like the third sheet. So the time I get it to the time I send it to roadway, I kind of wrote down how I would do it. And then once I send it to roadway, and it goes through the let date. So when you get field inspection changes, when roadway changes stuff because of right of way, you've got to make sure that you know, what changes do I need to make, because the sheet's not, the ad hocs and stuff are not dynamic. If you make changes to geopack drainage, you add stuff by hand, you've got to come back through and run through some of these VBAs again. I wish they were dynamic, but they're just not. And then once you, depending on what you do with hand design, you've got to remember to come back and run your station and offset tool, and you've got to run your drainage summary sheet again. The drainage summary sheet creates a new one. They're going to end up being totally separate. So from a roadway standpoint, or from a hydro standpoint, if you're having to do the drainage summary sheet, watch how much work you do up front, because if it gets changed a lot, if you've gone and moved all your stuff around, you've got it looking just like you want it to, and then all of a sudden we go to field inspection and there's a big change, they're not connected. You're going to have to cut and paste across or fill it in by hand. I mean, you've still got the benefit that all the information's there and it's in the right order, but you can't just, it's not going to remember how you got it looking the way you want it to. It's not going to remember that your 54s were on the 54 sheet and that kind of stuff. It's just not smart enough to do that. And I think, though, that we've still got a pretty good win. I think we save. The roadway person that used this the first time on my Durham job said she felt like it saved her a week of work. So, I mean, if you look at what it's capturing your structure numbers, your stations, your offsets, your pipe links. It's smart enough that it's knowing that it's by tops and inverts. It's figuring out that your box is over 5 feet. It's putting the 1 in the 1 column, and it's putting the depth up 0 to 5 feet if it's between that, and then it flips over to the greater than 10. It fills out that. We're mining as much information as we can and filling it out where it goes. So I feel like it's a pretty big time saver. I hope y'all think it's a big time saver. Hopefully we won't have any more major crashes for y'all in the next when we make modifications, so that it ends up not costing you time instead of saving you time. So that's problems. So Brian's already kind of discussed with problems. The problems we typically run in is when we initially did this, we didn't think about the fact that consultants were going to be doing it, because at that point in time most of the work was being done in-house. So we've had to adjust to the volume of work that's going out to y'all, and the fact that y'all work on a lot of y'all, your workspaces are on servers. Ours are on our C drive. Y'all don't always have y'all don't always have it as an R drive where you do your tip stuff. You do have to have your folders looking the same as ours, so that is one thing that we were able to fix. So I think we've worked through most of that. We hope we've worked through most of that. That's all I've got, and I can take questions, whether it's geopack related, drainage related, or whether it's any of these VBAs. I'll stick around till after Steve's done, so if y'all decide you have questions to that point,